Bet you didn't expect that. Oh. So a couple years ago, I did a video called What It's Like to Own a 2007 Porsche Cayman, Ask the Owner. Now it's been almost exactly 3 years of ownership for me in this Cayman, so I figured it would be a good time to do a follow-up. Okay, this is much more comfortable. So basically, the last time I made this video, it was almost like an interview that I did for myself. And so this time I'm basically just gonna ask myself those same questions that I asked in the first one, and then answer them, but after a 3-year ownership perspective. So without further ado, the first question. Why did you choose this car? Well, it was the best car I could get for my budget. And that answer really hasn't changed, because even now, I think if I was to go out with a $21,000 budget, which is kind of what my budget was at the time, and look for a used vehicle, because I'm not buying a new car right now with my current financial situation, it would probably still be a Cayman. So I just think it has the best combination of performance, practicality, affordability, all that together. So yeah, it's the best thing I could get for my money then, and I think it's still the best thing I could get for my money now. Next question, how often do you drive it? Well, these days I drive it about once a week. Typically I'm only driving this car for a video or just for the pleasure of it. I do have a company car that I drive for my daily commute to work for my day job, so I don't really need to use this car that often. Luckily, that means I don't have to pay as much in insurance and gas. However, if I did need to drive this every day, I probably would, and I would love every minute of it. The next question is, how often does it need maintenance? Well, I'm very lucky that so far this car has been extremely reliable, and I've only need to do 2 or 3 things a year in order to keep it well maintained. It doesn't need oil changes that often because it has a huge amount of oil, and the only thing that I've had to replace on it was the battery. Other than that, it's been pretty worry-free. I mean, I've never been left stranded, I've never had anything fall off of it or break down. Or anything like that. So far it's been extremely reliable, and I've really only had to do basic maintenance 2 or 3 times a year. Next question, what do you love most about it? Well, after 3 years of owning my Cayman, I can say pretty confidently that my favorite things about it are the styling, the size, the performance, and the practicality all combined. It really has to be taken as a full package, because there's a lot of cars that check 2 or 3 of those boxes, but I can't think of a single other car in this price range that checks all of those boxes. For example, in my day job, I work for Ford Motor Company, and although I do daily drive a Ford that is a company car, I do have colleagues come up to me and ask me, hey, why don't you own a Mustang or some other kind of Ford performance car if you want something to drive on the weekends? And my honest response is really, there's nothing out there that Ford makes or has made in the past that is small, 2-seater, manual transmission, performance car. Unless you're gonna go with like a Ford GT from like the mid-2000s, and as much as I would love a Ford GT by all means, it's not really in my price bracket. Even though all things being equal, I probably would trade my Cayman in for a Ford GT. The Ford GT isn't as practical as the Cayman, even at that higher price point. I mean, the Cayman has 2 trunks, a hatchback, plenty of space behind the seats. Now sure, I bet a WRX STI from about the same era would be around the same price and probably a lot more practical and probably faster, but to my eyes, the Subaru WRX does not count as a beautiful car at all, and I think it's even just a little bit too big for me. That's the thing with cars these days, is they're getting so large that it's hard to really just throw them around the way you can with older cars, even cars that are just over 10 years old. If you look at the 911, I mean, the 911 is huge compared to the original 911. And even though the more modern cars are obviously faster, they're safer, they have higher tech, they're overall, I mean, objectively better cars, they're not quite as tossable and fun seeming to me, because I haven't driven them all. They don't seem quite as tossable and fun as the older versions that have a smaller frame. One of the things I love so much about the Miata was how tiny it was, because I felt like I could just throw it around everywhere. It was super easy to park. There was hardly any excess on that car at all. And I feel the same way about the Cayman. Even though the Cayman is a little bit bigger than a Miata, there's really no excess on it. Everything in the Cayman and on the Cayman has a purpose, and it's all kind of as tight and efficient as it could be. The next question: if there's anything you could change about it, what would it be? It's hard to say that there's anything I would change about it without just making it a whole different car or changing something that's not the car itself. What do I mean by that? Well, basically, if I could change something about it, it would be I would love those tiny back seats that the Porsche 911 has, except then it would just be a Porsche 911. So you can't really change that about the car without it being a completely different car. The other thing I would change is probably the insurance cost, but again, that's not really something about the car itself that I can change. It's just a fact of owning a Porsche is that insurance is going to be quite expensive. The next question is, what is something about owning this car that most people don't know? Well, again, probably most people don't know that it's not impractical at all. It's actually a pretty practical car. The other thing that surprises a lot of people is that it drives just fine in the snow as long as it's not too high of snow. If it's just kind of like an inch or so, it'll do perfectly fine, as long as you have winter tires on, obviously. And I guess the other thing that most people don't know is that it's not actually that pricey of a car. I mean, $21,000, that's like Ford Focus money. I just think that most people aren't willing to sort of put up with the things that go around owning a Porsche. So the high maintenance costs, like I talked about, the insurance, and the fact that it is a two-seater, most people seem to like having a back row of seats. But I would definitely say the most common surprise that people find out about this car when they talk to me about it for a while is that it's really quite affordable, all things considered. It's not like owning a brand new Porsche or a supercar or anything like that. I probably make above the average American's annual salary, but really not that much more than the average. So I think if you're willing to budget and willing to be disciplined about how you save and spend your money, it's quite achievable. Next question: what is the most surprising thing about owning this car? I would say definitely how much I don't get bored of it. I would have expected 3 years ago that after 2 to 3 years, I would start to get a little tired of it and be perusing Craigslist again to find some sort of different car or something to sort of get me excited again. But it's not been the case like that at all. Every time I drive this car, it's a thrill, it's a joy, it brings a smile to my face. Every time that I get a chance to bring it to a car meet, I'm always excited to talk about it. I still love making videos about it, obviously. And I even kind of get butterflies in my stomach every time that I go take it out for a joyride. I'm still like shocked at myself that I have a Porsche Cayman at 26. I don't know why I looked at my watch. I'm 26. So yeah, I've been very, very lucky. I've had a lot of opportunities. I don't want to make it seem like this is something I could have gotten all on my own. I had a lot of help along the way, and I had a lot of support both in college and in my getting into my career and things like that. So I've been very lucky, and I still feel very lucky every time that I come out to my Cayman and see it parked there and know that it's mine. Next question: what advice would you give someone who is looking to buy one of these? I would say if it's in your budget and you find one and get it checked out by a mechanic and it's all good and it's clean, just buy it. I mean, honestly, the downsides are so little compared to the upsides and the joy that this car has brought me that if you're asking for my advice, I would just say go for it. It's an awesome car. You're gonna love it. And if you're not convinced, go watch all my other videos about it. I hardly have a bad thing to say about this car at all. Now, more practically speaking, I would say look for a Porsche Cayman that has decently low miles, but don't restrict yourself to the super low mileage ones that are going to be more expensive. I think any Cayman between like 50 and 100,000 miles, if it's been taken care of, is going to be excellent for you. So the other piece of advice I would give people is get the Bose sound system if you can. I know I talk about the Bose sound system all the time, but it's actually that good. I love it. I had no idea it was this good when I first got it, and it's amazing. So if you can find one with the Bose sound system, I would say go for it. The other piece of advice I would give is don't worry too much about Cayman S versus Cayman. I think they're both great cars. I haven't driven the Cayman S, so I can't say for sure, but I have had no regrets with getting the base Cayman, and there's no point where I'm like, I really wish I had a little bit more power than I have right now. I pretty much never feel like that with this car. And of course, the other piece of advice I would have for prospective Cayman owners out there is make sure you watch and subscribe to my channel and see all my videos. And if you really like your Cayman, or if you like Caymans in general, you can get this Flatagonia Flat 6 t-shirt. It says Flatagonia Flat 6 Engines for Adventure on my Redbubble page. So that's my other piece of purely self-promotional advice. All right, last question. What are my plans for the future of this car? I think my future plans for this car is I'm going to hold on to it for as long as I can. I really want to enjoy it and drive it and see how long I can keep it going. I do kind of see this as a long-term investment for me, so I think I'll have at least 2 more years with this car. Obviously, if some crazy deal on like a 964 Porsche 911 comes out, maybe I'd take a look at that, but I don't see those prices coming down into my range anytime soon. But for now, I'm going to stick with the base Cayman stock the way it is. I think it's almost perfect just the way it is. The only things that I've thought about doing, which I might do sometime in the future, is maybe getting some black wheels, maybe getting a more sporty sounding exhaust. One more modification I'd really like to do would be getting a roof rack mounted on this thing. I love the idea of having a roof rack on my Cayman so I can go on cool road trips with my mountain bike or my skis, or with some extra tires so I can go to a track day. I've seen a Porsche Cayman with a roof rack on a couple other YouTube channels and online, like a Summit Auto has one. And I'd love to take this car on some road trips to go skiing or mountain biking or kayaking or whatever. Unfortunately, roof racks are super expensive for Porsche Caymans. They're like $600 or so, which I don't really feel like spending right at this moment, but there might be a time in the future when I have the roof rack budget, and then I'm going to get that roof rack on there. So I think that will actually be the first modification I do before anything else. So stay tuned for some of those adventures that are coming up, because I've got some cool plans. Just might be a little bit before I can get them all together. I really appreciate you guys watching. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit that like button, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.